Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you for coming. Welcome to the Village of Holly Planning Commission meeting for September 27th, 2023. If we could all stand and say the pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Campbell?
Here.
Christian? Lacey?
Here.
Cascola?
Here.
DeSessa?
Here.
Wallace? Here. Beverly?
Here.
Kinnaman?
Here.
O'Connor?
Here. We got a text from Christian, and he had a work issue and would not be here tonight.
I'll make a motion to excuse.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, so excused. All right, looking for a motion to approve the agenda and anything that may need to change.
I motion to approve the agenda for tonight on September 27th.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So moved. All right, looking for approval of the minutes from June 28th, 2023.
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, so moved. Okay, I have a volunteer to read our statement of purpose, please.
I'll volunteer.
Thank you.
The mission of the Holly Village government is to enhance our community's quality of life. Our organization strives for quality services, responsive action to citizens' requests, and a cost-effective government. We promote citizen participation, proactive decision-making, and environmental quality. Most importantly, we shall always serve the citizens of Holly. The Village of Holly will be a prestigious historical village that is a green residential oasis from the city and the center of commerce and activity for the region.
Thank you. All right, moving on to public comments. If there's anyone from the public that would like to get up and speak before the commission, this is your time to do so. If you wish to, come up to the microphone, state your name and address, and feel free to speak.
Good morning. My name is Alan. Address 203 LeGrand. So I understand one of the things that are on the address today are for our illustrious new neighbors. As I understand it, we are looking at zoning commissioning for changing from residential presumably to commercial. What are we looking at here?
Well, sir, public comments for this portion of it is not on items on the agenda. When we move to the public hearing, that would be the time that you could get up and speak regarding something that's on the agenda.
Okay. So it would be worth noting that many of the people who were here last time when this was canceled off the agenda are not present today. It would be worth noting that their opinions have not changed, and the people who are not present, that weren't present last time, their opinions have changed, and they are not here today. It might be worth noting these things. And at what point are we discussing this property then?
Well, the very next item is the public hearing regarding the consideration of special land use, if you're talking about the 105 railroad property.
Correct.
Yes, that would be in the next, during the public hearing,
Okay.
which is the very next item on the agenda.
All right, then I will just just sit until we move to the next item.
Sorry, it'll be just 1 second. If no one else has anything they'd like to say regarding anything that is not on the agenda. I'm sorry, I should have made that clear in the first place. All right, moving on to item 7, public hearing. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
DeSessa,
Yes.
Lacy,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cascola,
Yes.
Wallace,
Yes.
Everly,
Yes.
Kinnaman,
Yes.
Okonski.
Yes. All right, we're now opening, public hearing, item A, 2023-006, consideration of a special land use permit for the property located at 105 Railroad, Holly, Michigan, parcel ID IH 0133433-004. All right, now, if there's anyone in the public that would like to speak on regards to this, but I think now would be the proper time to have, Row Engineering give an overview.
Sure. That's a request, certainly.
Good evening, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. So in your packets, you would have received our, the site plan as well as, our review letter summarizing, the review of the informational requirements checklist and the zoning compliance checklist, along with a, checklist, with the special land use review. I guess, a kind of quick summary, the applicant has met all the standards for informational requirement. The applicant has also met all the standards for zoning compliance as well. And, my comments regarding special land use are also in here, which I'll say quickly that, standard 1 for special land use, special land use will be consistent with the goals, objectives, and future land use plan described in the village's master plan. I find that the proposed use is allowed in the R1B district under special land use approval. Special land use will be consistent with the stated intent of the zoning district. The R1B single-family district allows for short-term rental under special land use. A special land use will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained to be compatible with and not significantly alter the existing or intended character of the general vicinity, in consideration of environmental impact, views, aesthetics, noise, vibration, glare, air quality, drainage, traffic, property values, or similar impacts. The applicant met all standards for design, construction, and operation for short-term rental, meeting those requirements. Special land use will not significantly impact the natural environment. It's a single-family home. Short-term rental will not impact natural environment. Standard 5, the special land use can be served adequately by public facilities and services, police, fire. Essentially, the site is adequate to serve by public facilities. It's a single-family home with a special land use request. Standard number 6, the purpose, the proposed use shall be be of a nature that will make vehicular and pedestrian traffic no more hazardous than is normal for a district involved, taking consideration turning movements, proximity, relationship, distances. There's no standard, there's no hazard to the public, vehicular traffic. It's a single-family home that's being built there. The proposed use shall be in nature, be of a nature that the location and height of buildings or structures and the location, nature, and height of all walls, fences, and landscaping will not interfere with or discourage the appropriateness, development, and use of adjacent land and buildings or unreasonably affect their value. In short, no, there's no negative impact. There's just building a single-family home on a single-family lot. And the proposed use shall be designed, located, planned, and operated to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. My comments are that there is no anticipated negative effect on public health, safety, and welfare. at the end of that, there's a sample motion for you guys for approvals, sample motion for disapprove or to postpone. Along with the site plan, the checklists that's in there, they've met all the standards. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Assessor.
So if I read this right, and I guess you just alluded to it, but I mean, there are absolutely no non-compliance issues, everything's
None.
been turned in that's required.
Nope, I asked the applicant for, more updated site plans and, designs. It's essentially a home that is already been built. I believe they received their certificate of occupancy perhaps?
Not quite.
Not quite,
We
but
did
they're
have a-
almost there.
Mhm.
So they're just building a single family, they built a single family home on a single family lot and requesting a special land use, for short-term rentals. So most of the standards that you have are in place are, for site plans, those are, usually for commercial or industrial uses. This house was built under just a simple, zoning permit, which is by right, and that I did the extra procedure of going through the full, site plan review and the special land use, which is required, so, they've met all the standards.
And, follow-up, so is there, just the one, smoke detector in there, is there, if there's more, is it meeting the requirements about being interconnected and all that?
Thank you for asking that question, Mr. DeSessa. I would like to note to the commission that the applicant has gone above and beyond the code requirements. He's fully suppressed that building with fire suppression and sprinklers, with it being monitored 24/7. So with that added aspect of safety, he's gone above and beyond the Michigan Building Code or any statute that is required through the zoning ordinance.
Thank you.
But to answer your question, yes, all fire alarms are interconnected. They are also monitored 24/7 through the same company that monitors the fire suppression system. So if that fire sprinkler system were to be activated at any time, there's a water flow meter on there that notifies the monitoring company, which then notifies 911 dispatch that will send fire, EMS, and police to that facility for a water flow meter
Thank you.
activation.
Anybody else have any questions?
I can wait till later.
Thank you. All right, anyone in the public would like to get up and speak in regards? Again, name and address, please.
Good morning again. My name is Alan. I still live on 203 LeGrand. Given the information provided, especially some of the newer information provided, it would be worth noting that many of the criteria that the single-family residence was built to was not to a single-family residence, exceeds that and leans towards a commercial residence or a commercial property. Does it meet commercial property minimums? That's not my question. The question that I have is, obviously, this was not built as a single-family home. It was not built with ever having the intention of being a single-family home. It was always built with the intention of being a rented property, such as an apartment or a hotel. Given that, you can even see, just walking by it on the street, there are multiple gas meters. That is not indicative of a single-family residence. That is indicative of condos, apartments, hotels, situations that would require not just more of a resource, but splitting how it's billed in a quantified use. I do not think that this property was ever built with the intent of it being anything other than a hotel. It is clearly every step of everything that has been done or said about it indicates that it has always had a commercial property purpose. So it was built as a residential property to sidestep needing to have it approved as a commercial property prior to even having built it. Now that it's built, now we're stuck with a house that is worth how much money and how much investment, time, etc. This was never meant to be a single residence house. Beyond that, One of the things that was noted is that it would not have adverse effect on any of the immediate surroundings. And unfortunately, the neighbor that can attest to it personally isn't here, that it has already affected his properties. Just in the building of it alone, we've seen how it affects the traffic around the building. Just in building it alone, and those are vehicles that are not necessarily even completely in the street. The street is not a commercial street. It does not handle traffic, it does not handle two-way traffic if somebody's parked in the street. Additionally, there are parking lines in their driveway to indicate that it's not really a driveway, it's a parking lot. More to the point that it's always been intended to be a commercial property. Everything about the property, the traffic, the impact it's already had on its neighbors, etc., has always indicated that it's always been a commercial property, and I feel that the wool has been pulled over somebody's eyes in the first place, just having built it as a residential property. So somebody was lied to. That being said, there are other questions about not just traffic, but other resources. How is this going to affect the waste resources, both chemical, fluid, etc., from toilet showers, etc., on that neighborhood? How is it going to affect the waste resources for trucks? Is it going to need a dump truck picking up a whole container, or is it going to be contained to trash cans just like everybody else? That would be typical of a residential building. There's very little question in my mind that this was never intended to be a house. It was always intended to be a hotel. Further, from what has been told to us by people building it, people part of the process, people knowledgeable about the situation, is that it's intended to be a bed and breakfast or an Airbnb for the wedding community, the wedding systems in the Holly. That being said, people be married, people be happy, that's fine. But I get stopped by wedding traffic crossing the street more than I get stopped by trains, and I have to cross both train tracks to leave town for work every day. So that is indicative of that as a commercial application, a commercial process, a commercial presence in town. And I understand how much that brings into the town, but I also understand how much that impacts all of the commercial interests around it. It'd be one thing if you're taking an existing commercial building and repurposing it into another commercial building, as has been by many other buildings in town. But how much of that is going to impact a new neighborhood that is otherwise unaffected by commercial interests? And that gets into the whole purpose of, you're bringing people in to celebrate. How often is that going to be an impact on the resource for the police community when people are partying late at night and neighbors understandably have a work life that they need to get up early in the morning for? Last time I was here, I had the printed copy of the ordinances for town noise ordinance. And unfortunately, it is not terribly clear, it is not terribly specific, but basically if I hear noise on my side of the property line, typically that's cause for concern. I can hear from my property weddings happening in downtown Holland, and that's twice as far. Do I think that this is going to be any less of a concern once people start doing this out of a property closer to my house? I think I'm going to have problems trying to be up at 4:30 in the morning to go to work. I think other people who have to be up early in the morning are going to have problems with it as well. And I think that's going to put a strain on police interaction with that property. I also think that that could potentially become a safety problem because I don't see enough parking places, even if you include the road, for tenants to be coming and going. And I expect that it's very likely that people will be parking on the far side of railroad tracks. What do people do at weddings? They imbibe. And I don't have any reason to complain about anybody drinking or having some alcohol with a wedding. What I do have concern about is people parking on the far side of the railroad tracks, tripping on said railroad tracks in the dark and busting some teeth out, possibly not even being conscious for the train that will inevitably come because that train is still active. So I've got safety concerns, health concerns, the obvious fire concerns are largely dealt with by the commercial grade fire response system, but there are other things that you can't predict or control with the element of party goers. And I don't know that we really want to turn a residential district into a party town, causing all of those properties to lose their value. So those are some of my concerns, and I don't know if you have any questions of me.
You usually have to ask questions.
That's fair. I can answer.
It's presentation, it's not.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's my card.
Thanks very much.
I thought so. I knew your daddy real well.
Yes, you did.
Listen, my name is Jack Bacon. I live at 117 Railroad Street, and I am affected by this building. I've lived there since 1972, January. Now, through the years, I've met most of the council people, most of the police officers, sheriff. So I am known in town. I'm known as the old grump now. Because I've been around so long. I remember when a past village president came down into our neighborhood, looked around and said, "My God, it's beautiful down here. I've never been here." That was our favorite artist, Reagan, before they painted. So I have a little history in there. I've known Mr. Mills and his family for years. I respect him. This has nothing to do with him, but it does have to do with what it's doing to our neighborhood. But years ago, they came in front of the village that they were gonna go right down the middle of the railroad track and down Saginaw Street, leaving the railroad area out of the historical district. And everybody was happy. The historical district got theirs, and we got ours, and we could paint any color we wanted to. And at the same time, it was brought up about the apartments. Since that time, there's been one big one that's been closed down, and another one that's been turned into like a bed and breakfast right on the corner of Saginaw Railroad. The next house down used to be a big apartment house, a lot of problems in there, and I'm sure you're aware of them, with parking and so on and so forth. I cannot see where things are gonna change between those two houses for parking. You have parking problems in this house. You can't just skip a house and forget about parking problems, because you're still gonna have them. It's just in a different flow. They're for a limited time, I'm hoping. So, my complaint is, of course, I don't want changes. I'm not old for it. I like the way it used to be. You know, they cut down all the trees down on Saginaw Street. I spent my whole life growing two great big maples in my yard. So I am stuck in the old days. But I hope I'm not really approved. When I see something like this coming up, I was never notified. I've never been contacted, not once, by any of you that they were gonna build a mansion up in there. Yeah, that's a beautiful home. Honest to God, it's beautiful. I'm sure you've all looked at it. It's the most beautiful house in this village. But it doesn't belong in a slum area. My house used to be a red light district, and the two of them next to me used to be. Now you're gonna put $1 million mansion in there. To start with, it's gonna bring our value up to where we can't afford it, and it's gonna knock his value down. Because you can't charge that kind of tax when you've got a $2,000 house that's next to you. I hope you take the time to realize where I'm coming from. You know, I'm retired now. Like I say, after 50 years, I got set in my ways. And I still know a lot of the people in town. I try to be social and stuff. Luckily, my neighbor gave a very good description of what was going on. Because if you remember, right, last time I was here, I was very disturbed. And then the meeting was called off because they didn't do some proper channels or whatever. And even from that time till now, nobody in the neighborhood's been contacted, only by our letters. I don't think that's right. If you're gonna put an elephant in a neighborhood, you should at least let people know you're putting a tent up. I mean, that's an elephant. And you got a bunch of little tiny houses around there, you know what's gonna happen. There's gonna be water runoff invariably. And we've got problems with that swamp behind. It's the runoff from Shiawassee, and it floods out the neighborhood. His yard, every time it rains, it floods out. Well, they've come in, they've done everything according to the book. They put up their retainers and everything, put their sod in, it's beautiful. But the water's still gonna run off that and stay off that property. It's gonna come into my neighbors. I've never had a problem. I sit on a high clay bank. But I know for a fact, I remember when the dam busted out in Davisburg, his house was flooded out. They brought boats in to evacuate the neighborhood down on Railroad Street, or the Grand. My neighbor had water up onto his porch. We've gotta have a consistency of water being dispersed away from us. Building a hill doesn't disperse the water away from us. It just puts more burden on the neighborhood. That's basically what I've got to say. Anybody like to talk to me? Like I say, I live on the corner of Railroad and Grand. I've been a proud owner there for over 50 years. And I hope that I can still be a good neighbor regardless. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no one move forward, we have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, roll call.
Right, Lucy, I don't know who that was.
William, yes.
Thank you. Okay. Lacy,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Everly,
Yes.
Wallace. Yes. DeSessa,
Yes.
Kinnaman,
Yes.
Costello.
Yes.
Volkowski.
Yes. All right, moving on to old business, discussion of capital improvement process. I've seen nothing new moving forward from, staff on that.
No, I can tell you that the progress is moving forward, and we hope to have something to you in the coming months.
Okay. All right, moving on to new business. New business is 2023-006 or consideration of special land use permit for the property located at 105 Railroad Street, Holly, Michigan, parcel ID IH 0133433004. I didn't know if Roe had anything more they would like to say in the opening statements of this consideration. I do have, I'll let staff go ahead and ask any questions they may have of you. Unless you have anything else to ask or add, you know, I guess you can come up and answer questions if they come up.
Yeah, I'll come up. Just to reframe, I just wanted to focus this whole application. The applicant has built a single-family home on a single-family lot. It's a development by right to get a zoning permit. The applicant has applied for a special land use, which, like I said earlier, is for short-term rental, which is allowed in the district by your zoning ordinance, by law. Your zoning ordinance also has, a checklist for relatable items to a short-term rental, which the applicant has complied with, and has, also not only complied with in terms of what they're providing on site, but also what they will comply with in the future going forward about all the requirements for short-term rentals. And you have the ability to approve the special land use based upon the, special land use requests. So you can, your comments there and your approvals, as well as the site plan. However, the site plan necessarily isn't truly relative because it's a development by right. It's not a commercial or industrial property. This is a development by right, which allows them to get a building permit and get it approved by the building inspector for occupation. And so we've done the extra step of doing a site plan review with information requirements, zoning requirements, and of course, the requirement for special land use. So we've met all those standards, and there's no outstanding items which the applicant needs to comply with or provide or answer. So the applicant is, pretty much essentially has met all the standards. So, in terms of parking, they provided, more than adequate parking. A single-family home only needs to provide 2 parking spots. There is, essentially, 10 spots on site, and I think more than that you could put in there, so there's no issue about parking in the street, I don't anticipate. In terms of public services, trash removal, it's a single-family home. It's not an industrial or commercial property where you're gonna have excess amount of boxes or, waste of some sort. And so there's pretty much nothing there that I see from a review standpoint that would be an issue. So, hope that made it.
You got a question?
Yeah, just, I understand that the proposal is allowed under R1B, as you say, and you mentioned that it's not commercial, but based on some comments here tonight, I wanna push back a little bit and ask, why is it not, I mean, the whole saying goes, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Why is this, based on what we've heard here tonight, why can we feel confident that this is not a commercial enterprise?
Right, well, it's a special land use, your zoning ordinance, which allows for a short-term rental to be used, to be in the R1B district, as well as the downtown district. So, your zoning ordinance allows for it. Just as if you would want to, have a diner in a commercial district, or.
At some point, does a residential facility become commercial? I mean, are you saying that we have no, wherewithal to reject this if we wanted to? I mean, I know we can vote how we want, but
So,
legally speaking.
it's not a commercial activity, it's a special land use, so.
Can I,
Yeah.
maybe help clarify the question?
Let me, I think, get to the root of it. He's asking basically, what differentiates what is the concerns of the neighbors,
Sure.
okay, compared to a motel, which is a temporary resident, someone coming in 1 night, 2 night, a week, a month. What differentiates that?
Well, one would actually be a commercial operation, and one is not a commercial operation. So, your zoning ordinance says that it's not a commercial operation, your zoning ordinance says it's a special land use. So, that's what it is, you can't say it's a commercial operation because it's not, as defined by your zoning ordinance, because your zoning ordinance is the definition of what is the regulations for your community. So, you can't say it's commercial because it's not deemed commercial, it's deemed a special land use. Are there similarities? There are some similarities, but the special land use, unlike a commercial activity, which a applicant can come in and apply for a site plan review and have a commercial activity, there's no special land use, so that therefore you have your activity and you have your commercial requirements and your zoning requirements. And in addition to that, you have special land use requirements, which are essentially a qualitative, in some sense, a qualitative measure of that use's impact on your community. So because you have a residential district and you have a special land use request for short-term rental, that increases the intensity of the use of the site. Yes, it increases the intensity, however, it's still not defined as commercial. But the applicant has met the standards and is intended to meet the requirements of special land use, so that you could deny it based upon the site plan, that it may not be meeting something, and you could approve it. You could also approve the special land use or deny the special land use based on the 8 categories that are in there for approval. So if it doesn't meet one of those standards, therefore it could be denied. So.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add just one more comment to that, piggyback off of that. I think, what we're looking at here is a large building. It's still a residential single-family home according to the Michigan Building Code. It's a larger unit. If you look at some of our short-term rentals that have all come before you, they're all single-family homes that are about 1,000, 1,200 square foot in size. The applicant has built a structure that is over 5,000 square foot in size, not for a motel commercial purpose, but more for accommodations. The applicant's intent is to be able to provide a space for the entire family to come and rent that space, rather than having the families spread out through town in different areas. They can all come. If you're traveling out of town, it can serve as a family reunion as such. And also, what's most importantly, is it's ADA compliant. So not only can he meet the standards for the citizens of general, but he also meets the standards for ADA compliancy. So people that are unable to go to some of those single-family homes, they can come in with their wheelchair or non-ambulatory issues and still be able to enjoy the same comforts that they would at a single-family residence.
Okay. One other question, I guess, just from a standpoint of if it is true that they did put in multiple utility meters in the structure, all right?
Maybe I should be answering some of these questions realistically.
I would
I'm
find
the
that
builder,
to
I'm
be-
the owner, I can.
We'll give you your chance.
Oh,
I would
okay.
find
And
that highly unusual for a single family resident,
There's not multiple meters.
you know. So, I mean, that to me would be a concern of intent. Anyway,
Well, I got a question for him.
all right,
Public can ask.
yes, public comment.
Okay.
They can ask us a question, and then, anyway, any other council members or commission members have a,
Yes, sir. So it's my understanding even, unless there's something that is not in compliance, we're required by law to approve this. So there's not, we can't vote it down even if we wanted to, because otherwise the applicant's just gonna end up suing us.
Of course.
So there's, right.
Well, it's based on these 8 things.
Correct, as long as they meet all those, our zoning requirements,
Right.
we must
Those
approve
8
the special
questions.
use. There's no,
And our determination is to decide not just what our planner has commented on those,
precisely,
but what we then feel about those questions as well.
precisely.
So, we could disagree with him on that. That's not uncommon, but, we are, yes, we're basing off from those
Yes.
questions.
any other questions for Rob? Thank you.
Maybe,
The applicant, would you like to?
I think it should be, yeah, for sure.
Sure.
So
I've still got a question.
Well, I'm waiting,
Especially
then
for
come
him.
on up. You had your turn, let's have another turn.
My question is very
You need
simple.
to ask a question to us, yes.
My question is very simple. You're telling me that he's completely legal, according to your books, because he's not commercial. But yet, if I sell something out of my house, create traffic, I am commercial at that point and you can shut me down.
Yep.
Because
You
I'm
have
adding
homeowner
extra traffic.
application.
That's the law. My wife was in business downtown. We started out of the house, we had to move out of the house because we had delivery trucks coming in. We were causing extra traffic.
You are selling goods, you are not selling space.
But he's collecting money for the purpose.
That's allowed in our zoning requirements.
It wasn't.
It never used to be.
It is allowed in our residential, short-term rental properties, use
Short-term
purposes.
residence.
You know, this whole thing is a farce. I'd like to know, honest to God, I'd like to know who got all the money. Who got all the money?
That's the truth too. Why can't this come before us and be
Build a house and
honest
sell it.
and tell everybody what's going on
Ma'am,
instead of
I'd ask you
building
to
it
come to the
all?
podium, state your name and address for the record,
I
please.
will do that.
Thank you.
I'm usually not like this, but I am now.
It's your right.
Kathy Bacon, 117 Railroad Street. I did have my business downtown for 10 years, and I read it above board. This upsets me because I'm seeing no parking signs in our street, and why are those there blocking residents from parking in the street? That's one thing that has come up. And that was just about a week ago. The other thing is, when I started my business, it was illegal. And as far as I know, it still is to sell anything out of your home that's gonna cause extra traffic. This is causing extra traffic. And if they have to put no parking signs in the street, that tells me there's not enough parking. I don't appreciate it. Lived here too many years, gone by the rules. Have wonderful neighbors. Don't be ruining our neighborhood. I love the house that you built.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. Why haven't any of the neighbors been invited to tour it? That's
Not-
wrong.
It's not complete.
Well, I don't know who it was, but we weren't. And this does include part of LeGrand because they're up to the back of your building.
Ma'am, address
I
the
mean,
commission. Address the commission. not
out of the
public.
building, and I just feel that it's rude to not let the neighbors know what's going on, not to invite them to tour and understand. I would like to know how many rooms are in the house, how many bathrooms, are there kitchens? What all is in that house? Do you mind answering that?
Ma'am, you address the commission,
Do
please.
you mind answering that question? We've told it's more than 5,000 square feet. We know absolutely nothing else about that building. You've gone above and beyond to make it beautiful on the outside, all the landscaping and everything. But why haven't we been invited to see the inside?
It's a residential property. How many residential properties do you have that come before you to tour?
Everybody we know, friends, neighbors, loved ones, family, okay. Well, when you go into a neighborhood like that and do what you have done, common courtesy, invite your neighbors. I'm done.
Is that the next one?
Okay, so hopefully I can clear up some things. I'm Mike Mills, I'm the owner of 105 Railroad. There's been a lot of things talked about, a lot of things that people are not sure of. I mean, I got some kind of stuff from the beginning. There are no separate utilities at this house. There's one electric meter and there's one gas meter. There are multiple air conditioning units because they serve multiple floors. One service, one house, one address. It's not multi-tenant. It never will be multi-tenant. It's not built to be multi-tenant. It can't be multi-tenant. It is a single-family residence. It's a gathering space for families. I seen a need in this village for families to be able to come together under one roof and have some kind of a luxury to it. Why not, right? So we bought the house from the village I don't know if you remember what it looked like before I bought it. It can't be any better than, you know.
It was a
okay,
single
Right,
family.
okay, so it was a
Okay,
single
sorry.
family home that was used
Sorry,
as,
address the
it was a
question.
single family home that was used, that was taken back on taxes, that was used as a fire training center. It was to block, you know, it was destroyed. It wasn't even livable. It couldn't even be salvaged. I tried to salvage a majority of the house for the Historical Society. It wasn't even salvageable. It had to be torn down. It was unsafe to the community. So we came together, we built a home, one family, not multi-tenant, not bed and breakfast, not multiple people coming from different ways of life, nothing like that. One family rents the facility for short term. They enjoy themselves with their family, they make memories, and they go home. It's short-term rental. The garbage will be collected in cans, just like it does on everybody else's property, and be placed at the street, and be hauled away by the garbage that I pay for. So my daughter lives there, she lives in the garage, she's gonna take care of the space when the guests come, so this is her house. Again, it's not multi-family, she doesn't have a separate meter, there's not an electric meter for her, a gas meter for her, it's all one. As far as the drain off and the storm water, that property's been there since the start of time. It's been there for as long as Jack's been there, and nothing's changed with that grade. That grade has always been the same, the property size has always been the same. There's been a new house placed on it. The house has been drained to the city streets, unlike it was before. All the gutter connections and stuff go to the storm sewer in the streets. So we've created better opportunities for the neighbors in the back that have always been flooded, to begin with. So we've taken the majority of that water that was always on that land, and we've diverted it to the storm sewer. So we've bettered that land for storm runoff. We've created plenty of parking. We've got 14 spaces of parking. I put a no parking sign out. I had a family, my family was invited over 2 weeks ago to finally see it. It was a family affair. I put up some no parking signs to put in front of Debbie's and the neighbors, just so nobody parked in front of their space, so they weren't getting upset. I didn't want them I didn't want to start off by having a little gathering and people parking in their space, so it started automatically. So about a little no parking sign, I put it in a couple neighbors' yards, just so nobody took their space. I let Debbie Musgrave know, this is what we were doing. I wanted to make sure she was comfortable with what I was doing. Not that she couldn't park there, it wasn't meaning that my family couldn't park there. She always had her space along the street, like she parks every day. These folks on the street park on the street, that's where they park. So that was the no parking sign. We did a small downtown open house on Sunday, just some downtown district, or people that we've been talking with along the way, letting them know what we were trying to accomplish to help better their business, that we were gonna bring people from out of town to stay, and then hopefully enjoy their shops, their ice cream stores, their coffee, things of that nature. Again, this is all about the village. This is me coming back to my town and investing in my town and trying to make it a lot better than what it was when I got here. I'm sorry to say, and I don't know if anybody, if people understand how property taxes work, but your property taxes don't go up because a house was built next to you that's worth more than yours. It doesn't happen that way. The only time your taxes are gonna go up if you build or improve your property, or if you pass a millage like you did for the new school. Therefore, your property values can only go up when things are better, but your taxes don't go up. So your taxes will not increase, but your property values may. The house that just sold next to me sold for $203,000. It was less than 100 square foot. There was no way that property was worth that kind of money before I started, So I guess if anybody's got any questions for me, I kind of talked on the stormwater, garbage collection, utility meters, single-family residency, not multi-tenant, and just kind of the main goal was what we're trying to accomplish.
So then my assumption is also the no parking signs will be coming down.
No parking signs are portable stands that stay in my garage when I had an event, or if I thought just, again, it was strictly a courtesy to the neighbors. I've tried to keep everybody out of the way of everybody's neighbor, with construction, I get it. We had a lot going on. We increased the traffic during construction like you would any other way. But now the construction's over, the people are gone, the parking's gone.
I do have a question. Your daughter being the caretaker, does she live there all the time? So
She will.
She will be on the residence, so if somebody has a problem, they can
That's right.
contact her directly?
And just so you know, I don't know, how familiar you are with an Airbnb or
Oh, I've
VRBO.
been doing it.
Everybody stays in them, but it's all good to stay there, but not here. But there's house rules.
Okay.
There's down pay, or there's deposits that could be lost. You know, I've talked with Jerry Narsh, and we've talked about, you know, that type of, you know, I know the ordinance, we know there's house rules, there's quiet times, there's all of that, I mean, you know, we understand that, we are gonna follow it, and that was part of the site plan, or part of the agreement, that we were gonna follow all federal, local, state laws, and that's part of it. An ordinance in a town, on a noise ordinance, or a parking, we're gonna follow that. Of course we are, I mean, so.
Anybody else have any questions?
Just real quick, you mentioned noise. There's obviously no signage then out in this location.
I'm sorry?
No signage.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not going on railroad. We're calling it the Grand, but there's no sign that says it's the Grand. It's just
Yeah.
something fun that we did on our own.
Anybody else? Thank you.
I've got a quick question for the board. And this is just a statement.
Name and address.
I hate this. There's other states in the process, and I heard this in the news here a couple weeks ago, and I'm not sure that you're aware of it. There's other states in the union that are discussing breaking away, outlawing the air bed and breakfast. It's got something to do with the tax purposes. This might be something you want to check into for the future. I don't know enough about it. I just want to bring it to your attention that there is some states, I think Texas is one, I believe California is one of them, and might be Florida, but they're thinking of making away from these air bed and breakfasts, because they've had a lot of trouble over collecting taxes overall on them. So this might be something you want to check into, if not for this one, at least for the future. Because if they're gonna start passing laws, it's gonna affect everybody. And I hate to see this, I've seen this,
Address the comment.
I've seen this little guy grow up in that high. And I hate seeing it get taken on the tax deal. As far as taxes, they don't run quite that way. I've been involved with buying properties and selling properties myself. I've always lost money on it. But when you go in, fix the house up to sell it, they come in and they revalue the property.
That's correct.
When the tax tribute comes around, they look at everything and say, whoa, this guy's paying $1,000 a year, this guy's only paying $400 a year. We gotta equalize this. That's what the tax tribute's all about. I know, I've never complained, because when you complain about your taxes, they'll bring them down for 1 year to go take them up 3 times the next year. But I just ask you to really check your conscience on this, because it's affecting the people in that neighborhood. And we've always tried to be good neighbors. I mean, exceptional neighbors. Railroad track, I've seen more people drive over that railroad track and have the wrecker come in and pull them off, because there's not even a road there. I don't know how many times they tried to extend the Grand across the track. It doesn't work. I've seen a young man die here a couple of years ago. That was terrible. And I would hate to think that I took part in a project in this town that did not take that into consideration. If I have a drink, start with, it's against the law to walk on railroad property, period. You can't walk across the tracks unless it's a legal passageway out like on Sagas. I cannot legally walk out my front door and walk across the track to the post office. Not legally. I've been doing it for over 50 years. Legally, it's
Careful,
against the law.
you just said that on public record.
Well, you know, I had worked with the police there on the railroad. And I would hate to think that somebody come out of that place after having a couple of drinks, just take off across the track, walk around the guardrail, come back, not pay attention, and get, you know, because it's not just railroad trains. There's trucks that come through there, there are work trucks and stuff, and they toot their horn, but people don't hear it. So we gotta take that into consideration too. We don't want anybody getting hurt in our neighborhood. That's the bottom line. We wanna live there in peace and harmony. So please keep that in mind for the neighbors. It's not just a money proposition, it's a life proposition. Thank you very much for your time today.
All right. Members, any more discussion between yourselves?
One quick item, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the applicant for actually going through and listing out all of the surrounding zoning. I think the last two that have come for us, we hadn't had them, so thank you.
So we're ready for a motion. This one's an easier motion to make.
One
because-
question to the board, if I may. Can I make one more question to the board, or is,
One last time, sir.
So, in one of the most recent speakers, they had mentioned something about a resident living there in the garage. And that
Apartment
started
above the
making me,
garage.
say again?
It's an apartment above the garage.
So it's an apartment, does that make it a commercial building? And that's where my question is going, is how are we not defining this a commercial building when it has an employee? And that's my last question, and my last statement will be, I know all of you live in the city of Holly. I can't say that about the people who built the building, or have any financial interest in the building, or are pulling the permits for said building. But I can say from my own personal observations that it has multiple times made effects on the neighbors in its area, in both traffic and the environment. Thank you.
So before I make the motion, can I ask the planner to explain things a little bit about how a unit can have two sort of residences in it? How do we do that? How does this building meet that? How does this building meet, that, single family, requirement with that, that extra or living space in it? How does that?
We have caretakers for our other buildings, our other Airbnbs. So this would be a caretaker, I would assume. That's a caretaker of the residence. It's not an employee, it's a family member of the owner. And that is a caretaker, not an
I would
employee.
like to hear more about.
Another way you can look at it too is that it would be kind of similar to a mother-in-law en suite. I don't know if any of you members have brought in your mother-in-law, but it'd be like the same type of, correlation between the two.
ADU,
If there's like a size,
ADU, is it fall under an auxiliary dwelling unit?
No, because it's under the same roof line.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, yeah, just to answer, I would have to defer to Jeremy on the building code in terms of, I could do more research on that in the zoning ordinance, but, it seems to me that it's just still part of the same structure, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. So our zoning
It's not
ordinance,
a separate structure. That would be my first question as a planner reviewing it. Is it a different structure? It's not. It's just one of the bedrooms that is above the garage,
correct.
which is one of the owners of the single-family home.
Correct. And our ordinance states that you cannot have two primary residences on one lot. This still meets the criteria of one primary residence, one address. My assumption was that the daughter was gonna be a partial owner, which would be her establishment, her home. Now, she is renting, the family is renting that out as a short-term rental. She is also, per our ordinance, we are required to have a manager within a certain distance away from that residence to respond to the needs of that habitant. Instead of having somebody located off the premise, they have somebody located on the premise 24/7, 365. I've also been informed that that individual is gonna be somewhat of a concierge service. if you drove by, you can see the applicant has provided,
Keyword is service.
provided a van, and they will be picking up food, getting linens, dropping off dry cleaning, whatever as an extra luxury for those residents staying in that environment.
And I understand, you know, our Airbnb, our short-term rental, ordinance allows for someone who has just a regular residence, that you can turn one of your bedrooms in the residence into a short-term rental. You know, you can rent it out for the weekend. Short-term is what time?
I believe it's 14 days.
14 days.
Don't quote me,
maximum.
I'd have to refer to the ordinance, but I'm pretty sure.
And so that, I think that helps me understand that a little better. Thank you.
I think sorry, Mr. Chairman, I think personally the size doesn't really, I mean, if it's, we let someone have one bedroom, there's no reason we shouldn't let someone have 5,000 square feet legally.
Legally, no.
Right.
I mean, one of my friends has a house, he has a kitchen upstairs, he has a kitchen downstairs, full bathroom upstairs, full bathroom downstairs. His family most of the time spends in the basement, so I don't think it's that uncommon.
Any other comment between the commissioners?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a motion?
I make the motion to approve the requested special land use permit located 105 Railroad Street based on each of the factors from the 8 questions. Further, to ensure compliance with the standards, the following conditions are part of the motion, and that must be addressed as all of our ordinance items post-approval, as in books and those kinds of things.
Mr. Clinton, I apologize for interrupting, but for this particular motion, I would need you to list all those bullet points.
Go ahead
in
and
there
read them.
verbatim.
Will you
Okay.
start over, please?
Okay. I'm basically reading what this is.
Verbatim.
I know.
Okay,
I know.
so that you see what it is. Okay. I make the motion to approve the requested special land use permit located 105 Railroad Street based on the following findings of facts. The proposed use would appear to maintain the character of the neighborhood and complies with the land use plan. There are no proposed changes to the existing structure. The proposed use will not significantly alter the existing or intended character of the area. It does not appear the proposed use would significantly impact the natural environment. The proposed use will be adequately served by public facilities and services. The proposed use does not appear to present a vehicular or pedestrian hazard. The proposed use does not appear to discourage the appropriate development of adjacent land, and the proposed use will protect the public health, safety, and welfare. Really, there's nothing under the additional concerns, but to
I'll
just
second
state
the
that
motion.
all short-term rental ordinances will be followed.
I still second the motion.
Thank you.
We have a motion, we have it seconded, can I have roll call, please?
Costello?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Lacy?
Yes.
Wallace?
Yes.
Everly?
Yes.
Kinnaman?
Yes.
Bessessa?
Yes.
Okonski?
Yes. Motion approved for the special land use. Okay. Moving on to new business, item B. Review to changes of wording in ordinance 157.043, exterior lighting, from flats to looms.
Looms is the business
Yeah.
up on
True that. No, Alex will be speaking on this from Rowe.
Yeah, sure. I'm still not sure if it's lumens or luminous, but. This is what I do for a living. Correct, so, playing chair, in front of you is a draft copy, one of your existing language, that, would have made a change from watts to looms, along with some of the noted track changes I left in here for your review to see how that would change the language. In addition to that, I've also added a supplementary, I'm trying to find it here, is it included the,
This thing?
yes, my little chart. I think it's before it, sorry, I'm flipping the pages the wrong way. I did a little research, on this to kind of understand what the transition looks like from watts to looms, because ultimately, watts is just the energy amount that's being, used, essentially, and lumens is essentially you're measuring the brightness of what's casting out, as you guys know, because you wanted to draft this. So in here, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. I hope I try to make this as clear as possible. The other alternative to this discussion, just as a best practice, because you have watts, you have looms, energy output, and then the amount of illumination. You could put in here, or just remove all of this, and use a candle foot lighting amount at the edge of the property. And that kind of, I guess in a way, simplifies everything, because you could have, though, despite the fact that you do have provisions in your zoning ordinance to make sure that lights aren't illuminating and cascading directly onto someone's property directly, but if X amount of looms are projected out, you could have effect where you do have light shining onto someone's property or being a bit of a light nuisance, if you will, and that either including or just simply using candlelight at the edge of property may be also beneficial. So I just wanted to bring that up as a discussion if you wanted to have that, but otherwise, if not, I think I've gotten a pretty good, precise draft one of how you could use your existing language and transition it into lumens based on my calculations that I've used, kind of an average out of different calculations from different sources.
I think your comments are well-founded, because candle light is a measurable from, and we require it for our site plan reviews.
Right.
To say and have a argument where someone is putting a light bulb in that has so many looms and it meets the criteria in the ordinance, doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna meet the criteria for the candlelight power that may cascade onto other properties.
Right.
Yeah, along those same lines, any idea what other communities, are they doing the candlelight thing too? I mean, would this be compatible with best
Yep.
practices?
Other communities do. And so what it does is if an applicant just for whatever reason needs it to be a little brighter in a certain spot, I can't speak, but just hypothetically, you don't have to have anything there that, determines how many looms are one situation or another. You could have a max amount of looms allowed in the village, but then, on top of that, you have an X amount of candlelight effect at the edge of the property, which is actually measurable. So that, I guess it's just something that allows you guys to know that someone's site plan is in compliance, because you can actually measure that. So, we could come back, maybe revise some things in another draft form, or add in some language, but, I think it's something that I'd be remiss if I didn't share with the planning commission at this time when you're looking at your exterior lighting ordinance.
Just as a follow-up, I mean, I would like personally for one to see that. I'm not sure we're in any hurry. I appreciate Jim for bringing this up, the issue, but based on what you said, Mr. Oconski's question, I would think maybe we should wait and take a look at that part of it. But
Now, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doesn't our current ordinance say something like at 3 foot, we still do measure the foot candles? Is that correct?
I think it's
I think it's 3 foot, I think it's 3 foot off the ground.
3 foot or 1 foot, yeah.
Whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's the edge of property.
So my concern with that originally was, unless you're a dork like me and you buy a monitor to see if you're trespassing light on your neighbor's property, no one really is gonna have that little bulb they're walking around with their property to figure out if they're light trespass or how much they're light trespassing. So I think if, right now we list wattage, where wattage really doesn't mean anything. So if we had both in there still, and we listed, just so the consumer, they're going out and buying a light, and they're gonna say, hey, we wanna buy a light, you can look at the package and it will say X number of lumens right there, and they can easily say, is that compliant with our ordinance? Now, there will be another aspect to that with the foot candle, I think it's foot candles.
Yep.
The foot candles, but still it would give the consumer or the residents a starting point.
Right, but I would like to see wordings where it's co-listed in one area where someone could read this and see the looms, and then in some type of a statement alongside of it saying not to exceed, you know, the allowable candle, output.
Because when I was thinking of it, I mean, if someone wanted to get like we did have a restriction on lumens or what have you, and we were worried just about light trespass, we had an applicant came in trying to put a storage unit up, and people were worried about the light coming over. Well, I was thinking, okay, well, how would I get around that? I would just put lights and shine them right at the building. And I don't think you're gonna have a whole bunch of light trespass, you're just gonna have a huge bright building that we probably don't want.
I agree, that's a valid point, so, you know, it's in, you know, the purview, I'm just trying to bring options and best practices to you, so, I could just, you know, make sure that candlelight is very clear for property lines in the draft ordinance, and we could make, you know, make the transition from watts to looms. It's just that, I just brought it up because, it could be slightly confusing for an applicant or the planning commission to kind of make sure that the applicant is bringing a site plan that meets your requirements and just, you know, with measurables, if you will. So,
I like your idea. I'd go consensus with doing something.
Just
Does it
for
still have
candle.
foot lumens on there, or foot candles, excuse me?
Where there'd be co-reference in there, you know, where it's not to exceed, you know, type
Yep.
scenario.
Yeah.
So that an applicant, doesn't have to search the entire ordinance as defined the data required. So,
I could come back with a draft too for your next meeting.
right, that's what,
Doing that, and,
is that what everybody's preference is?
I like that.
Sure.
All right, so on new business, since it's just a review, pardon?
There's a hand.
sorry. Let's open that. So the zoning map, lots of colors, I don't know anything what it means, I'm just kidding. So what we've done here, Jeremy, just refresh my memory a little bit. So we've added, sorry, go ahead, yeah.
So, it was brought to our attention that the zoning, map was not compliant with some of the zoning changes that this commission has made in the past. So really, without listing each and every one of those parcels in particular, what we've done is provided that list to Row Engineering from administration and drop that into this map to align with today's version that you see in front of you as the most updated zoning map, that we have on record.
Right, because what was in the archives online was outdated.
That is correct, sir. And also with the master plan, because things have changed throughout time.
Mhm.
I think we missed a PUD.
Oh, where did we miss
Mill
that, miss?
Point. The Mill Point subdivision was a planned unit development.
So that was before my time,
Yep,
and I don't believe that was referenced on any of the previous maps,
it
so.
was a planned unit development.
So on the maps I have, it does not show that,
Okay,
So the
so,
reason that happens, just so, now we're gonna get
Before
really
my time.
nerding out on this, hate to interrupt Jeremy.
okay.
please do.
Is that, so this data that we get from the county, which thank God you're in Oakland County and not in Lapeer, cause right now it's a mess there. That's a whole different discussion, but what it is that this data comes from GIS, but they use information from the county assessor in terms of what each individual, the tax ID on that property. So you guys went through plan unit development, it is a plan unit development in your zoning. However, at the county tax, from what I understand, and I've had this explained to me, they recognize each of those units as perhaps a single family or a multifamily or commercial. So I'm not familiar with the project, but I'm just saying, why would that show up on the zoning map? Based on the GIS information, geographic information systems, the program, they get the information from county records,
Okay.
which have tax IDs. And those tax IDs don't have a PUD, right? What they have is it a single family house or not?
Alright.
Even though it went through your process as a PUD locally. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little confusing.
Okay, so a traditional condo PUD probably looks more like what the county would think it should as opposed to a lot of single family
Yeah,
homes
so that
inside.
does happen, so that when you do your master plans and update, you wanna make sure, you know, a lot of times you have, you know, rural parts of the county or, you know, Lapeer, which we've seen is it a single family residency or is it ag residential, right? They're real similar,
Mhm.
and so everyone's like, well, all my whole street's, you know, single family, and then some of the houses are ag residential. Well, the tax IDs never change, they just maintain the same thing, so then you have this kind of, slight confusion. So really, it's a matter of, this zoning map is about what the use is occurring. So for your zoning map and your zoning standards, it is a PUD. So that's how the technicality came through, why you missed a PUD.
Okay,
Yeah.
Another thing that you might wanna take into consideration too is what are the limitations in a single family R1B, R1A residential or district versus a PUD?
okay.
So are we looking at Mill Point Sub to be a PUD and allow them to have the same uses that a PUD would be allowed? Or would we rather like to see it be an R1A, R1B? Now, that's strictly under assumption from what you just brought to me right now is what's coming to me.
Yep,
Excuse me, I don't have record to prove that.
okay.
But
Well,
that would be
I'm very
something-
certain of it because it was during Mr. Murphy's administration and it was when the village manager handled all of that development. And then when we got done, we didn't have adequate water, and that's why we ended up with another water tower. So there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that that was a planned unit development.
Okay,
Now, it doesn't matter today, maybe
so I've been
not.
here almost 12 years and I've never seen it recognized as a PUD, so it happened.
So
When it was,
what happens with a PUD, a plan unit development?
yeah,
is-
does it matter now?
Right, it's not, I mean, it's, you know, it's a floating district. An applicant can use that as a tool, essentially, in your zoning ordinance to create a certain use. And so when you have like the subdivision, perhaps, just hypothetically speaking, typically what you see is you'll have, an applicant, they wanna build something, and it doesn't fit your zoning standards, your zoning requirements, your setbacks, right? They wanna maybe cluster the houses together and have more open space, or maybe add a commercial use in there that typically wouldn't be allowed that close to, you know, current zoning ordinances that, you know, you see commonly around the country. So what happens is they come with a planning and development, and that's kind of just a way to negotiate setbacks and standards to, have a particular development occur. So you could, instead of having just your traditional single-family houses with your, you know, your setbacks are required, now you can come in and say, I wanna do planning and development on this property, and that way I wanna do the setbacks to be a little tighter, maybe a little cluster, maybe a little taller, whatever something may not be. Instead of doing all these various variances, sorry for that, but instead I'll just do a planning and development instead. It's just an easier way of getting it, sometimes an easier way of getting it done.
And there is plenty of green space up there as parks and places for those community residents to establish a green area.
only reason I know this is because it's my neighbor. So between, basically one parcel is zoned incorrectly on the map.
Which one is it?
203 is neighborhood office commercial.
NOC?
203.
203 North Saginaw. So between Oakland and North. The second one up north of Oakland on the west side. I think it was the Planning Commission in 2021 rezoned it.
Okay, we can definitely research that at the administration level, and if that was an error on our part, we apologize. And like this can be draft one, we can bring an updated version of that to the next meeting, showing that correction. North of Oakland right here, so I'm assuming.
Okay. So we're looking at here. Oh. And we're saying, what is it supposed to be? OC?
And OC.
Instead of, what is it now?
My neighbor, essentially. Okay.
So we'll research that.
Yeah.
We'll research that at administration level.
Yep.
And definitely make that change. I believe there was 6-ish, parcels that were amended on this map, so, we tried to get them all going through.
We've got the one next to McDonald's up there and everything else, it looks like, so.
My apologies, I got your neighbor, didn't get your neighbor, that wasn't our.
That's the only reason I noticed it, my neighbor.
And I guess I'm just curious why the high school property is coded as a PUD. The little box over at the side, East Holly Road, Rood Road, that's the color of a planned unit development, but it's a school. See what I'm talking about on the far right?
Yeah.
I believe it was a 425 land agreement that allowed us to be able to run the water and sewer out there and put police out there.
So I don't do really well with colors, to be honest.
Okay.
Is that single family or is that?
No, it's the school, it's the high school.
Right, but is that PUD though?
That's
It's
all
the
it is.
color of PUD right
Okay.
now.
Right
That
here.
big giant parcel there.
Yeah.
Right.
On the side.
But it's definitely not a PUD, it's a school.
And that's why we put it as a review on the agenda, just to make sure, that you guys are copacetic with it before we make it a standing document.
So what should it be then if it's not PUD?
Whatever a school would be, you've got the schools now are listed as R1A.
Right, and so my thought is it probably would be an R1A because
Yeah.
my thought is that you do allow schools in residential
Be
districts.
consistent, yeah.
It may have been one of those that as well was initiated as a PUD in order to get certain things done.
No, it's a school, you guys just do what you want.
And say you guys.
You guys, just do what you want.
Yes, local schools aren't, they're exempt from zoning ordinances. Local
See?
zoning.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
Don't say you guys. I'm far enough down the totem pole.
Okay, you're exempt, you're exempt.
Yeah, so we'll make those corrections, to both the high school and, 203 North Saginaw. We'll bring that updated map back to the planning commission for a second review. And if at that point you guys have accepted that document, we'll move that up the chain, of the approval process to make that a standing document.
Okay, any other questions, guys? Findings?
I guess I do have one question. The hunk of property down in the very lower right corner, East Rose Street, and then it falls south of there.
That's cycle, or not cycle, it's Swanson Park.
No, no, sir. It's behind high school, or behind middle.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I didn't know that there was an adjustment like that. I thought it was just a straight line across Rose Township. Cause I think that's the property where there's a lumber mill right now.
No, the lumber mill is actually, the township.
That's still part of the.
From what I
Oh,
understood,
you're right.
that's Sorensen Park.
It is
continues
Sorensen
there.
Park.
Yeah.
Yep, it is
Yes.
Sorensen Park. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep, you're right.
yeah, cause I always thought Sorensen crossed the,
So you use a little sluice right there.
Yep. Got it. Okay, my mistake.
Are you okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Don't you all have your township hats on?
And the,
I don't
is
have
that an
that.
old chambers?
Me neither, I wasn't gonna admit
Excuse
that,
me.
but me neither.
the piece of land, the green one up here, top left corner-ish,
Mm-hmm.
is a floating piece of land.
Where we at?
Oh,
That's the water tower.
no.
We own the water tower, separate piece out there. This is the white area around that is the new development, behind Patterson. And that is township, it is not village. But we own the water tower property.
Thank you.
Jay, anything else?
I believe you're good, Alex.
All right. Moving on to, item 10, training review of last month's training video, yes?
I'm sorry, sir, we have to address number D,
Oh,
or letter D.
yes, we even talked about that when you. All right, sorry, D, discussion on the ramifications of opposing new growth. And, yes,
Yeah, Jeremy put in our package a copy of an article that I thought might be of interest to the members here, and I'm a little fuzzy on it myself because it's been a couple months, but basically, and again, it's in the back of your packets, but it just talks about Dollar General and its expansion plans, sort of similar to Wall Street and other big box companies where they're expanding, and it's causing some planning commission issues throughout the state. This article deals with Southwest Michigan and a community who turned down a application from Dollar General, thought it was over, and of course it wasn't. They sued and ended up winning in court, of course, because I think what this shows is this, we had sort of maybe similar discussion, not apples to oranges tonight, earlier. You know, you have to have specific reasons to do what you do in a commission. You just can't say, we've got 3 lumber companies, sorry, fourth applicant, we're gonna reject you because we just don't want another lumber company. Is the application in order? If it is, you pretty much have to go with the application. If I'm wrong about any of that, please tell me, but that's certainly my understanding. And so it just reemphasizes that whole issue. Township supervisor is quoted in this article saying, you know, officials wanted to be responsive to the concerns of the community. Ultimately, the board unanimously voted to deny rezoning based on the planning commission's recommendation because a mixed-use ordinance had not yet been drafted. Peterson also knew giving an okay to rezoning wouldn't be the end of the story, and it wasn't. And the issue has since sort of petered out. My understanding is the store is there or being built. Construction started in late spring with plans to open the store this fall. So that's in a nutshell what it is. But I just thought it's maybe instructive to commissioners.
I appreciate you bringing that to Mr. DeSessa. And I would just like to, you know, set some of the residents, and advocate for you guys. You guys have an extremely difficult job. And not that your opinions don't matter, they are very respected. However, it puts the administration in a peculiar position if they were to do something similar with a big corporate, right? Corporate's got a lot more money than the village, and they would adamantly sue because we didn't follow, we were going off emotion rather than rule. So I commend you all for the job that you do. I know that it is some very difficult decisions that you do have to make. Ultimately, we had to follow the rules and regulations that were created, either before us or during our tenures. So I respect you all.
One more quick example that comes to mind is, based on what Jeremy just said, you know, the recent marijuana cannabis issue. You know, not a lot, I don't know, I didn't take a survey, but some people in town are certainly opposed to cannabis. And that may or may not be the case on this commission, but it came, we were advised on possible legal issues, what would happen if we didn't go with that. And the commission thought it was making, in conjunction with the village, making the best decision to proceed with it. Again, not everybody was happy with it, but we felt that that was the best issue to do, is proceed with how we did. And so sometimes your hands are kind of tied a little bit with what you may personally want, but that's the key, is personal versus community.
I think you did a great job summing that up.
We had, I know there was an experience like that just a couple of years ago, in the township, out on the northeast corner. A business purchased property, it was zoned for what they wanted to do with it, and the neighbors didn't like it, you know? And at that time, that planning commission, sided with the, you know, took that into their decision and denied the, you know, building the project, you know? And the owner of the property took the township to court and definitely won their case, because there wasn't objective things that could prevent that. There are times where you go, yeah, it's not what I really want in my neighborhood, but it fits the parameters that we are given to work with. And so you know, that becomes some of our challenges. We've had a couple of properties in town that we have had come to us much like this, and not always are the neighbors, the residents, completely happy with that. But we have to make objective decisions, not subjective ones.
May I ask a question, please?
There are public comments at the very last item on the agenda. Thank you.
Let me ask Richard and Chairman Akowski, speaking of, going back just for a second to the Airbnb and rental, short-term rental, didn't we indeed though look at that issue a year or two back and do a resolution even about that? I'm not remembering what it was about exactly, but we did talk about that, I thought. Is that not true?
Mr. DeSessa, I think what we did is we were proactive, right?
Yeah.
We created ordinances, rules and regulations for these types of entities. Where at that time, a lot of the communities didn't have these rules and regulations set in place.
Yeah.
And as you all are aware, I'm assuming, and there's a couple newer members, there is House and Senate bills on the floor still to this day to discourage those types of uses in communities. Or, I'm sorry, I say corrected, to allow those uses without local AHJ authority having jurisdiction, rules and regulations.
We chose to be proactive and put regulations on them and requirements on them over and above what a resident would be required.
I was gonna say this during public comment, but just going back to this issue earlier tonight and along those same lines, should everybody agree with this? I mean, I'm just throwing this out there, but I just wonder if we shouldn't at least in the future take, I'm sorry.
Could
So
we
Yeah.
address that during comment?
We can, I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number
Mr. Chairman.
10.
Real quick, it's on topic. So, let's say for instance, we do have a Dollar General or someone come in and they wanna put a store up, they meet all of our ordinances. Can we then delay their application and say, we're now changing our ordinances?
No. No.
So
You
can I-
you can only enforce what is written except regarding master plan. The way I understand it.
Right. Okay, should I
Sure.
come up? Okay. So Mr. DeSessa's comments, I think they're pretty timely too. We see a lot of generals, Dollar General, Family Tree, we see them all. They're all over rural Michigan. They're growing exponentially everywhere. We see their site plans. Their site plans are generally really good. It's tough to nail. They do a really good job with that. They have good architects, good planners who work on their end. And I think it's really important to always review your zoning ordinance. I think Jeremy and I have talked about this too, about your standards of approval. I think those are really, really important because that's one of the bigger things that happen in suits is listing, as you did tonight, your standards of approval as reasons why. Communities generally don't do that. I've seen that happen time and time and time again. One of my client communities, though that I didn't work with them at the time, they're having a suit because of a variance they approved, actually. Not one they denied, but one they approved, which the neighbor felt that they didn't follow their own standards. So now it's got a legal component to it in circuit court. But yes, not only when it comes to a site plan, whatever you have on the books currently in your zoning ordinance is what the rule is. And if an applicant comes in with a use that's allowed in the state, and you may not necessarily have that use in your zoning ordinance or a landing spot for it, doesn't mean they can't apply. They can apply as long as it's a legal use in the state of Michigan. So that's why it's always important to update your zoning ordinance. I know Jeremy and I talked about this. There's some things in your zoning ordinance that are maybe a little clunky based upon ones that I see and I write for other clients when we rewrite them. But you always, after, best practice is you update your master plan every 5 years to review it. After you've done your master plan, you've set your goals of what you want to do. It's a good time at that point to also review your zoning ordinance, because 20 years ago when I started, who thought solar was really a thing?
Yeah.
The village, you don't have a lot of space for it, or no one's demonstrated a use or need for it. However, a lot of my clients, a good chunk of my time now, 25%, is just solar and wind and solar and solar and solar. And those are pretty contentious meetings. So, that's a new use and that's a legal use. So then communities have to kind of, create a zoning ordinance around that. So I always say, you're farming your community. You guys are tenants, not tenants, you're keepers of the zoning ordinance that look at it. So it's always a good thing to review that, because you really can't deny it or put a moratorium necessarily just because your zoning ordinance isn't equipped, if you will. Yeah. It's a really gray area. I wish I could give you specific direction, but it's a tough one to nail, so. My 2 cents, guys.
All right, moving on to number 10, training. All right, reviewing last month's training video. Did everybody take care of that, hopefully?
Nope, don't know what you're talking about.
Last month, when we did not have a meeting, there was a link to a training video that was to be watched.
Did anybody? I didn't get it. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
It was in your email, it was been in your emails, a hyperlink, all you had to do was
I
click
don't
on.
get any emails.
I'm sorry, I did not know you didn't get emails as a commissioner.
I
You usually
have
provide
said
on
it
your
at every
application.
meeting that we've talked about this, that I am not on the village's email distribution and I'm not getting.
So then you need to stop into the office and update your application to state what address you want it sent to.
It hasn't changed
Do you
since I
get your,
started.
packets through email?
No. They drop them off at my door.
Right.
The only thing I get through the email is the newsletter.
Okay. well,
And I
then
have
check
brought
your
this
email.
up at past meetings, that I am not getting anything through the village's email.
If I may, the email address that's being sent to is everly55@gmail.com.
It's not being sent.
It's
That is
still
my
public
email.
information.
So
It's
maybe
my
it's going to
email, but it's
spam,
not
and then
coming.
you may be having it
It's a
set to spam.
No, it's not coming to my spam.
Okay,
I'm
It's not
not
something
on
that-
the distribution list, I'm just saying.
okay. According to our emails and our chains, we have you listed as that individual item.
Can-
So on a private matter, we'll have you come into the office and try to get that cleared up.
Can
you enlighten us on what the video was about? I also missed it, and I just failed to do it, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I apologize.
In
Will you
just,
go and watch it?
it was, two individuals, I believe a supervisor and a, planning person, and they went over, procedures that should be followed during a typical, planning commission meeting and how it should be held. And they went over various topics. One of them that I asked for tonight, by taking up the video, where when we had the, a public hearing, all right, that in a public hearing versus just hearing from the public, that you're either, like Jeremy, his position and or the planner should first get up and give an overview of what is being talked about for the public hearing, so that the public actually has an idea of what's being considered.
Yep.
All right. I've never done that before. I've always waited until the new business in that area. So that's why I asked Ro to present in the first place.
Great, thank you for taking notes on that video. And I know some of the videos are cheesy or, but unfortunately, the budget for the planning commission training module is what we would like it to be. So what I do is I search the internet for what I feel may be useful information. And I knew we had a couple new planning commission members, so that's why I kind of included that hyperlink in there, was to just try to, in essence, give a 30,000-foot view of how a planning commission member should conduct themselves.
And one thing I did touch on also, again, with our topic of the night, was we are to follow our guidelines as we have as our packet and our zoning, that is, we have sworn to uphold, and that, you know, even though there may be emotions and valid concerns over different topics that may be before us, if the applicant meets the criteria, it is not an opinion of the commission, it is we're following our guidelines. Anyway, that's the
Thank you for
gist of
that.
it.
And you still can go back and look at that
I sure will.
through your email.
My email, I have to update my email too, because it goes to my old email, which I have to move to my.
Please, if anybody's having concerns, stop in, the ladies are great in
Nothing's
the
bouncing
office.
back to me, so.
We are showing
I
that
get
to
them,
the board.
it's an extra step, and sometimes it takes me a
Okay.
while, because I don't generally monitor that.
Feel free to stop in, the girls will definitely accommodate you.
I probably would have to call.
Okay, moving on to item 11, reports. Do we have any ZBA?
I believe it was canceled.
We do have one coming up for next month though,
Yes, we
I
do.
keep on hearing that.
Monday. No, Monday we do. Is it Monday?
Yes.
DDA,
Oh, it's gonna even show up for that one, and they didn't have it.
DDA.
I don't believe we have a representative other than council liaison, Mr. Finneman.
All I know is cut down trees downtown.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. But some things to understand with that. Those trees were planted in the 70s and were supposed to be a maximum 20-year life tree. They have destroyed the sidewalks around them. You talk about uneven heaved sidewalks and damage possibly to roads nearby and curbing and everything. And so it was more than time that those trees had to come out. It is a shock, I know, as I drive down the street, I'm like, wow. But then I look at some of the old photos from, 100 years ago, and there were not trees downtown. So,
The horses trampled them.
Huh?
The horses trampled them.
You were there,
Yeah.
So,
No, that was my dad.
the concern is at the moment about the stumps that are there, And, I think those are being scheduled into when DPW can get them ground out and also take the sidewalk sections out, replace the whole thing. They will then plant new trees offset from those stump spots because that's not healthy to go in the exact same location. They will be offset from that a little bit, and they will have grates like the rest of the downtown has grates, that eliminate the brick edging trip hazards, which is part of what you experienced over in, on Broad Street as well. Those were trip hazard spots. And I remember just 8-10 years ago when that was the way the whole downtown was. And so the grates make it a lot safer. And so give them 6 months, okay? And maybe by spring we'll have new trees planted and everybody will.
So not Dickens, huh? Nothing working.
Those trees down in that section, well, I can't guarantee it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did stop today at It's a Doozy,
Yeah.
the store, and she was saying that she was very, almost pleased that the tree in front of her, business is now not there,
Right.
because you can see her business now, where a lot of people are like, I don't see it, well, it's because it was covered up with the tree.
Yep,
So-
Richard Winkelmeyer was saying the same thing. The
Yeah,
minute those trees came down, he said, thank goodness you can see my sign
Yeah,
again.
so,
Yeah, you can
know,
see.
so-
there are some
Opens down the
pros with the
Right,
cons.
and so that's the big DDA thing coming up, so, maybe move on to
Transition
council.
on to council.
Transition on to council. Naturally, the big thing with council yet is the, selection of a new site for village offices. And, we, voted to, at least speak with the township and see what a contract would look like. And, I know that they had a second meeting with them this evening at the same time this meeting was taking place. So, they're supposed to have a sample document to bring back to council, at the village council meeting in September.
October.
Or October, yes, sorry.
And are they looking at this from a budget primarily type stance, where we'd be theoretically paying rent the rest of our lives versus ownership?
I think, we need to wait and see what that contract looks like, the agreement, as to what it actually entails. I know the things that have been, well, I was at the meeting last week where they had discussion, and, I know that the committee from the village, asked for the possibility of condo, as opposed to lease, and, the township was, getting answers back from their attorney on how that would affect other parts of the agreement. And so, I think that was part of the presentation tonight. was
And
gonna be-
just to be clear, there's never been a rental. It's been, they would loan the money to the village for the build-out. The village would pay back that loan in lieu of rent, and then it would be a 99-year lease for $1 after that. Those are the terms.
And the,
Not
the
that
direction-
As far as renting from the township.
There's no rental.
There's no rental.
No rental.
yeah, the direction that the meeting last week took shifted that a little bit from a 99-year, almost what you'd call a perpetual lease, to a condo scenario. And so they were, I think that was what they were going to
Yeah.
present tonight, was something more in that direction.
Anything else?
I think that's the big thing, so.
And anything with parks? All right, now we're going
All
on.
I could say
I can
about
tell
parks
you.
is holiday, or Halloween is coming. End of the month, last Saturday of the month, that will be Halloween as typically done. It is a parks event, but it begins with all the businesses downtown, and following trick or treating in the businesses is, fun in the park, put on by the Parks, Parks Board.
The parks did vote to remove the fencing inside of Cyclone Park. So it will just
Around
be
the,
totally.
around the ball field.
And the dancing witches will be at Halloween.
All right, moving on to item 12, commissioner and staff comments. Started on the board.
I was just wondering about if we have any ordinances on
Can you speak into your
panhandling.
microphone?
On panhandling. I've been reading all about with Fenton and in the hotline and all that. I was just wondering if there was any ordinance, because they can't seem to do anything about it. And I know that there was a lot of scams. There are people that do need, but there was a lot of scams up in Flint before, where a person would bring in a bunch of people and put them on, and they were making quite a bit of money. So I was wondering if there was any ordinances that we had that would handle that.
Honestly, Ms. Lacy, I don't know a for sure answer. I would appreciate just a little time to do some due diligence on it. I do know that we have a solicitor's permit and a peddler's permit. So my brain's kind of tracking that way. But I would have, to give this board a confident answer, I would like the next meeting to research that to give you a most educated answer.
Thank you.
So it's my understanding that it's very hard to regulate free speech, and
Oh,
that's all it is someone's doing a charitable appeal for a contribution. So
Okay.
if it would be basically being me out loud to go ask you for money. If I say, Richard, can I have some money? Like that's,
No.
yeah, see?
If it's in front of businesses, do the businesses have the right?
So then I would look at it as more as a trespassing.
Oh, okay.
But all sidewalks are public,
Yeah.
Sure.
so
But if you have
you're,
if you have a permit in place, then you have to go through that process.
But it talks about soliciting and peddling.
Yeah.
And really those permits are for the events downtown, and you see the lady with the ice cream cart. Or you see the vendor that has the cool little LED lights for the kids to shine around. Those types of things is how we're trying to just keep control over that.
I was just wondering because of seeing in the hotlines and
Sure.
hearing about it in the newspaper, over in Fenton.
so I think when I read about Lake Orion's, I think it's Lake Orion, they recently passed something along those lines of solicitation. And how theirs is you can't impede traffic. So if you're trying to target people on the road,
Right.
you can't go into the roadway to collect money. Now, however, if someone's standing downtown and on a public road or a public sidewalk, that would be difficult to enforce, is my understanding.
Right.
So I would reach out to Chief Narsh, would be my
Okay.
first person I would talk to, because I believe that would be a police power activity versus a code enforcement activity.
Right. I just didn't know if they had anything.
It's a great question. I'll definitely look into it for you, Ms. Lacy.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Kim?
I don't have any. Yeah, a couple things, going back briefly to the solar panels, I mean, that's actually a consideration for other things too. In this case, in the village, we have the Historic District Commission, and that's come up before our panel there too. We had an applicant that we had to deny because he was in the District Historic Commission, but yet his property, he wanted to put all these solar panels up that would change the exterior of his house, which is what we have a say over, and so in that specific case, that was, he's trying to conserve energy and do the right thing green-wise, but it was in violation of the Interior Department standards, and so we denied it. Just throwing that out there, another consideration for things like solar that we may not think about. Second is a question, where is our, because Chief Narsh, you mentioned his name and this triggered this to me. What about this parking policy they've been working on? Is that coming out soon? Do you know?
Mr. DeSessa, I cannot comment on
Okay.
that. It's not my lane
Yeah.
as fire marshal or building inspector. That would be more of a police power
Police power.
enforcement.
Okay. And then lastly, going back to the issue earlier tonight, you know, I just wanna throw out, depending on Mr. Okonski, the pleasure of this commission, maybe Jerry Walker, et cetera, maybe this commission coming back and taking a look at this issue tonight from a standpoint, everything was legal, we approved it, I voted for it, but this issue, if it reoccurs in the future, do we first wanna be proactive and take a look at what, if anything, we wanna do to make sure that's shored up so that just can't anybody, you know what I'm saying? I'm not saying anything was done wrong tonight, but the issue is, you know, some big footprint comes into a residential community, there are parking issues, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a way we want to take another look, a closer look at this and possibly suggest the council tweak that ordinance? That's all.
So I think what we have to look at is what we have in place now. And are we above the law or below the law, and are we doing what's ethical and proper for the community? I think that's why we hire Rowe Engineering, not so much that we are inept, it's more of, they are the professionals, they do this in many communities on a day-to-day basis. I don't think that what we did was inappropriate. I don't think what you guys did was inappropriate. I think what we've done has been exceptional on being proactive, especially with these short-term rentals. And as you all know, because we've talked about this at great length, the state of Michigan may overrule everything that we've already put in place by allowing these short-term rentals to come in and operate without
Or
any
taking
rules
them away.
or rules or regulations.
They might actually take them away. That's.
Well,
So maybe I didn't understand your question.
No, I think you did, I want to stress, I thought it said up front, I'm not accusing, there's no inappropriateness that I'm suggesting at all, and again, I voted for it as well, the entire panel did. I'm just thinking, is there anything we can take a look at there, and if people think there's no issue, that's fine with me.
Well, I do know, just from conversations that I have had with our planner, that maybe our special land use is a little bit above and beyond what some other communities are, and I may be overspeaking that. But just to give you as a commission reassurance that as administration, we do try to protect our entities, but most importantly, our community at large, right? Why we took those extra steps when the marijuana facility came in. They were either gonna force it down our throat and do what they wanted, or we were gonna be proactive and make some rules and regulations for them. So I think it kind of piggybacks onto the short-term rentals as well. You know, nothing against the residents that are here, but 50 years ago, it was a different time. We have to evolve with what is the new standard, and do we know what the standard is? Another reason why we default to Rowe, they are the experts in the field. They keep us a little bit in line. I do agree with Rowe's statement earlier, Alex, with that we do maybe need to take a deeper dive in our ordinance just to make sure that we are in compliance with today's standards, our expectations, right? I have brought that to administration. I know it's really nothing personal or Rowe, but it is an expense, right? And being a community of 6,997 residents, 3.04 square miles, where does it fall on the chart, right? Obviously, I'm not trying to belittle that our zoning ordinance needs to be updated, but we also, you know, the fire department needs fire trucks, the sidewalks need to be repaired, our infrastructure is 70 years out of date, roads, right? So at what point do you say, okay, we're gonna put the money extra towards this, or how do we separate, we'll give a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this to everybody, but still try to make an impact. So without taxing the residents astronomically, it's a very delicate balance. And what I've learned in my tenure is it's very hard to make everybody happy, but you just gotta try to do what you feel is right for the community at large.
Well, piggybacking on that, I would like that we would stop canceling meetings and we would have our monthly meetings and we would do exactly this deep dive into our zoning and the things that we're talking about. And this special land use thing came up when we were talking about the storage units over there off of Saginaw Street. And I was uncomfortable with it then. I'm uncomfortable with it now. My question would have been, if this builder would have come to you and said, I'm going to build a rental unit, and it's only gonna have, you know, like one family at a time, would that have made any difference if he'd come to you and said, I'm
Yes.
going to build a single family residence?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Because
so to their point, I feel, why you feel you got the wool pulled over your eyes, because somebody came and got permission for a single family residence, but it was never intended to be a single family residence for the traditional, what we think of.
So he did come before this board a little over a year ago and withdrew his application before the house had
That
footings
meeting
in the
was
ground.
canceled.
And the
Okay.
meeting got canceled due to the applicant withdrawing his proposal.
Okay, so.
Now, he didn't give me a reason, but that is his right as an applicant to withdraw his proposal at any time.
Okay,
Now that the building is built,
now he's back.
through this whole process, his intent was to put a short-term rental, which is allowed by our zoning ordinance.
Okay, so my question is, how did it get approved as a single family residential, which implies
Because it's
that
allowed by
I'm going to
zoning
build it
ordinance.
and live there? But if he had come to you and said, I'm building this building for the purpose of renting it to someone out besides my family, then he would have been held to different standard, right?
No, that's not a correct
just as
statement.
a rental house.
Yeah, because you can have, if you go down North Street, you have a unit on the north side of the road that is, from road presentation, looks like a 2-unit, but it is a actual 4-unit, apartment building.
Right,
So it would fall into a multifamily or a NOC, it would fall into a different type of zoning where that applicant would have to come to this board and ask or request a spot zone, which would change that criteria. According to the Village of Holly zoning ordinance, under R1B, you are allowed to build a short-term rental, whether your intent was to build a single-family residential or to have a short-term residential. It is a mute subject because it is allowed in the residential zoning ordinance. So,
okay, well, that was my question then. If he had come to you and said, I'm gonna build this and rent it out, it wouldn't have made any difference. He still would have had all these approvals, but now he has to come and get a special use because it's a short-term rental versus a long-term.
yes, so he
But
could
he
have,
also knew it was gonna be short-term rental when he built it.
but if it didn't go through as a short-term, he could have converted that to a long-term rental, which does not need planning commission approval, only administration approval.
Okay, but we're just sliding and slipping around things, and I can understand why these.
Well, not really, I'm stating the facts.
No, really,
I am
really,
stating
we
the
are,
facts, what
because
is the
if he had
zoning
come to
ordinance
you
states.
and said it was a short-term rental
Which is allowed by the zoning ordinance that this planning commission has put in place.
and a
Or
long-term rental.
previous. Long-term rental is a zoning ordinance that does not need planning commission approval or a special land use, which is also stated in the zoning ordinance.
I just
So
fail to.
flipping or sliding or stating the
No,
facts,
I
it's
just
really a
fail
matter of
to see
interpretation.
why now he has to have a special use. If it wasn't a special use to begin with, why is it a special use now?
It was a special use and he did come to this board but withdrew his application.
He
And never
doesn't
presented.
need special use to build a single-family home.
Just to use it for the use
In
he
order
wants.
to use it for that, he needs that special use. Now, if something would have been, not met within the special use guidelines, if even one item in there would not have met the guidelines.
Oh, I get all that, I
Yeah,
get
we-
all that, I'm
we
not
could have
disputing
denied it.
any of that.
And in reality, by his investment in building, if there would have been one thing that we could have said didn't meet, he would have done that investment for naught because it would not have been approved.
Oh, he still has a single-family home that he can sell,
Yeah, but I'm
so
saying,
it wouldn't have been for naught.
but for his gamble of use, yes. But I understand your point.
I think it's,
No, don't hold your finger up.
You will get your time to speak in the comments here momentarily, so I would please respect your,
Please respect me.
I do respect you, sir.
it's too complicated and it doesn't feel right, and if there's a way we could make our rules be easier, I think we should do that.
So it may be
Instead of
complicated to
these
the average
special
layperson,
uses-
but that's why we have the professionals
Right,
and
and
administration that help direct you through that
Which takes me
complicated part.
back to, we need more meetings so that we understand what's in our zoning ordinances, and maybe these special
And
uses.
that also requires your participation as a planning commission member to go above
You
and beyond.
gotta have the meeting.
well, you gotta do your due diligence by looking through that ordinance and determine whether or not you see a gray area that may needs to be addressed. And then you bring that back to this
Mr.
commission.
Watson, this is only my third meeting
That's why we talk about these videos and these training videos.
that I don't get.
You were on the email chain, it does show that it's being delivered. So if you did have an invalid email address, it would show undeliverable. So, and we've solved that issue. You come in for
You're
that.
welcome to go through my email mailbox
I don't-
anytime, but they are
I
not
wish I had
there.
the time for that, but I trust you.
No, I'm fine.
Would you like?
Me?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were pointing to Mr. Costello or not. I have a couple of things. Speaking of the email, maybe this is a good time for us to get village emails so that we know that they are going to everybody.
Thank you.
Because we don't have that. And so when they're going to our personal emails, it might bounce back to spam. And it might be something that is an issue. So that might be something we wanna look at, just to make sure that everybody is getting the information, because we did have a couple issues, not just email, but with deliverable packets, with emails not getting to our personal emails, and I think that also protects us from our personal emails getting looked at that need to be only village email.
Doesn't
Because
seem-
that has been. an
Doesn't seem to be a
issue.
reason why some people have a hollyvillage.org email and other people don't.
Yeah, that's one thing, just because it's come up. A couple other things is that, me and Sherilyn and mine, I'm not quite sure which way that goes, sorry. Our names are not on as commissioners, it still says vacant. So if we could get that addressed,
I'm
that would
sorry,
be great
Mrs.
on the website. It still says that, yeah, it doesn't have me and Sherilyn listed, it still says that those two places are vacant. I've been on since January, and so it's been almost 10 months. So
I
if we
appreciate
could-
bringing that to our
yeah,
attention.
that was brought to my attention, and cause I don't look at that, but somebody brought that to my attention, so I'm just bringing that
We'll definitely look
forth,
into that for sure.
forth to you guys. I also had a question about, the cloud canvas. When is that building coming down? We've issued all the permits, we've issued everything that needs to be issued from what I've heard.
So the planning commission has, so it's still going through, a building department review.
Okay,
And we had a conversation 2 weeks, 10 days ago about safeguarding the property during demolition. And they still need to provide us with some of those safeguarding, items.
okay,
But it is moving forward.
okay. So, yeah, people wanna know when it's coming down, because
Sure.
it is the biggest eyesore in Holly.
Yep.
And so we wouldn't let any other business look like that, and they've had this building for 2 years. So we need to get the ball moving in that area, if at all possible. Also, I stopped in today at Gnome Daddy Pottery, and they're hoping to be open within 3 weeks.
Oh, good.
So that would be great, they're waiting on one inspection from somebody else completely, and then yours afterwards. So Steve and Mike are the people I talked to, really nice gentlemen. And last but not least, Mr. Watson during holidays was able to connect a lost child with his mother or her mother, I'm not quite sure which one. So I wanna say thank you from a mother's heart to you, thank you for making sure that child got reconnected with their parent.
Thank you for that.
Great job.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I did inquire with a third party too about emails for all of us, and not someone from the village or someone else here that I contact. And his advice was, or his input was, planning commissions typically don't get it, to get their own email addresses. Is that what you would say as well, Mr. Alex?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was gonna say, emails are an issue, it's not funny, but it's a public document, you just post on the website and everyone can go up there and get it themselves and print it off if you need to. I mean, this is, public information right there, what's gonna be shared and discussed. You could post on the website and everyone up there can go download it or read it for themselves. You don't even have to download it, just look at it and then have your packets right here for you. So it kind of solves that logistical nightmare you guys are,
Now-
going through, so.
Are you familiar though with other communities having email addresses for all of us?
Not typically unless you're a council member. you know, I don't really get into that administrative part, but just anecdotally from what I've seen, I mean,
To the
it's
best of
either
your
your
knowledge, I'm
personal
not gonna hold
emails.
you to it.
Yeah, just off the record, I mean, well, not really off the record, it's public meeting, but usually personal emails, or you just post on the website and everyone can go up there 14 days before the meeting and look at it yourselves, and, you know, that works, so,
That becomes an issue with trying, so.
well, it's there, you know.
I think I mentioned before, but for my email, I just set up my first name, last name @gmail.com. And I was also advised that any communications I have electronically, that I just either send them to myself or take a screenshot and send them to them. So Ms. Wallace asked me a question if I had received my packet. She did receive her packet. It was not via email, so I literally just took a screenshot of that conversation and forwarded it over. So now if someone ever does come and want, I can say, any electronic communication I've had is here you go. So I had a couple other items. I do agree with Ms. Everly. I think it would be very helpful to have some type of meetings, even if there's nothing on the agenda, that might give us time to dive into some things. One of the items that I was most interested in learning about, and I tried to, was the actual drawing of the chart of light intensity. So Cloud Cannabis had a map of all the light and the projective of how intense it was and everything else. So I tried to figure out how to read that thing. And in the end, I just relied on your associate, I think, who was here that day, to try to explain it. So I think there could be some benefit to there. Finally, I guess last, hopefully next month, second time dad.
Oh,
I have a
congratulations.
baby coming this couple weeks from now, so that's all I have.
I'm not sure what's left to talk about. You're going, oh, good, right? I would just comment on the state level of the short-term rental stuff, that it's a matter that I have watched very closely. Shortly after we came up with our ordinance that we've got, and we worked, I think we spent almost a year developing the ordinance, just in the process of creating something that we felt would be protective of our community while not restrictive of something to happen. There are times where it feels rubbed, but you know, we did put something in place that we felt was very helpful. And you know, some of those things are the parking requirements, you know, that, you know, your normal home, yeah, you could open up a bedroom and let it be a short-term rental. But once you do, you have to have enough parking spaces for you and your guest. And so those things are built in there, and it changes some stuff. So we worked all of that through very, very much in, you know, probably 4 years ago or more. Then shortly after we did that, we hear that the state is getting approached, and where it's coming from is the Airbnb company and Vrbo and those that they are blanketing multiple states where it has been undocumented or a little challenged, or communities that have put real restrictions on. You get some of our vacation communities, especially up north, the Mackinac City area in particular, Frankenmuth. They put such restrictions that they said zero, absolutely none, no short-term rentals at all. And these companies have really pushed hard enough to get those communities to give a little bit that we may all lose. And what I have seen is what we have put in place, like we require I believe every 6 months,
Yes.
an inspection every 6 months. A normal rental, like we are renting where we are at, and that is required every 2 years. So we built in every 6 months, that property has to be inspected and make sure that it's still following all of the guidelines that are in place. If this stuff in the state law goes through, we cannot do any requirements that we don't require of every other homeowner in that zoning classification. So if we don't require 6-month inspections at your house, we can't require them there. And so that's some concerns that we've got about that law, about what they're looking at changing there.
I just gotta disagree with you, because the cities are having a fit. When you get to Marquette and Grand Rapids,
I get
those
that.
cities are fighting back just as hard. And there's a big difference between an owner-occupied rental and a house that somebody just builds as a rental and uses for income. And then what is their primary residence, and what is their homestead? And so those issues all need to be addressed as well. But that idea that the state's gonna go over and start marching over top of cities, I disagree with you. It's a
They will.
boogeyman we've been hearing for a couple of years.
I have read the law that they are trying to pass, the bills. I have read them, and I've read the mock-ups, and I've read the discussions, and we have had people here go and testify before the committees, and they've thumbed their nose at us. They don't care what the community wants or has. The state is being lobbied by the big companies, and we, as a community, will be screwed. And so be glad for what we've got and what we took this one through to get where we're at, because it could all go away. Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm just seeing the other side of it.
No, I have to agree, because we get these information regularly, and the same with mining right now. The state's
Yep.
gonna preempt all of that mining, open pit mining, so
Oh, it
luckily you're not in
already is.
Oxford or other communities we work with in Lapeer County, cause
Springfield.
they're gonna be preempting that, and, well, solar as well right now. So, I don't know if you don't have it could be, I'm hoping that if you don't have if you have one on the books, you can at least do something, but
Right.
it's a home rule state, and these, how can I say this? I guess in a larger 10,000 foot view, I would say, as a consultant or just, advising, is saying, things are happening in all areas at a faster pace than ever before. Like I said, solar, who the hell knew, sorry for my language, that was even a thing. Cloud emission, are you kidding me? But I guess they will find a way to do it, right? So, and now it's a use, and wind too, and Airbnb. I mean, what's next? All I can say is, as your stewards of the community, to look at your master planning as you've done, and look at your zoning ordinance as you do, and have productive meetings, because I worked, like I said, I worked with Main Street of Oakland County as an assistant program coordinator. We spent a ton of time in Lansing making sure that DDAs and tips and downtowns didn't go away, because everyone wanted their share of the money from tax revenues in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, until everything started calming down. We were up there in Lansing constantly advocating as, county staff for Brooks. And so now that whole thing it's becoming more and more, even at the local and state level. So it's worthwhile having that discussion and seeing what it is in the community that you want to be. It's your community, and I just have one thing. I don't know if it's my turn or not, but we have our continuing education series. CES, you guys attended. Holly did a great job attending. We're working with another zoning official, building department official. And we're gonna pretty much talk about, for an hour, maybe more, step by step, the whole process from planning, zoning, approval, all the way into the building permits and how that gets done. So I think it'd be very valuable for you guys, because Holly, I've worked with Holly on and off since, 2010? So it's been 12, 13 years, and it's a beautiful community. I love coming up here just because I do. And you guys are getting interest for people investing in your community and being here, shopping, consuming, living, getting married, whatever it is that people love coming up here from.
Discovered us.
Is that training been scheduled yet, or?
We had it for October, but might have to push it back. We are super short staffed, and we are super, super busy, and so we might move it into November possibly. But you guys will know, information will go out too. I
Just
want
one
to put
request,
that in
this
your
time
radar.
if you can cater it with torch burners, that would be nice.
I kid. You could pregame there.
Not have that on the same night as a pub crawl, either. That would be great.
We'll work on that.
Yeah.
So just to piggyback on what Alex said is, reach out to your local representatives at the state level and voice your concerns over these topics that we're discussing tonight. Because unfortunately, at this level, we're doing our best, but it's really the people that we elect in those offices at the state level that we have to reach out to and advocate for our wishes as individuals for our communities. So I respect everybody's opinions and comments. Unfortunately, just like your hands are tied, local government's hands are tied on some of the things too. But as an administration, personally, I can say I strive for those types of proactive events rather than reactive. So I digress.
All right. Pretty much everything has been addressed that I could think of, right? I think that we have hashed it quite a bit. A few things regarding the comments made tonight in the special land use. One item, noise concern, parking concern, garbage concern, traffic flow concern, and safety concern, right? All those items are valid from a neighbor to neighbor type circumstance. On their site plan and or their building plans that they showed, they did have, again, following regulations, quite a bit of porch area and deck area showing, which would bring up a valid noise concern, people gathering outside the house. Again, we do have restrictions on noise. We do have, nuisance. Parking, they do have adequate parking spaces, supposedly, again, unknown. Garbage, they're gonna use the standard village pickup. If it exceeds what is normally out there, I know we have unlimited type pickup, so that would be something to keep an eye out for. Safety, all right, where they were talking regarding possible alcohol, people being stupid. Unfortunately, as a commission, we can't control stupid. That's goes back into public safety and the police department. So all these things are the responsibility of either the police department and or, well, actually all of them are really police department other than garbage. So if things do get out of hand and or abusive, you have to get all your local police department and make sure they're aware of it. I think as a village, we also then should, with the concerns being made, take special attention and track issues regarding this establishment. Is it repetitive? Is it something just a fluke? Irregardless, as a commission, we should know outcomes versus things that are being looked at as possibilities. Until it happens, we don't know. So I think these are all things we should be aware of and monitor and help our decisions and possible changes moving forward. That's all I have.
Can I respond to those comments? Sure. So as you did say, those are all police power effects, and, if you do, please, of course, I would expect that you wouldn't abuse the system, but if you do have a valid complaint, I would expect you to just pick up the phone, 911, and display your concerns. Secondly, I think what can reassure maybe some of us in this room and ones that are watching still on YouTube, is that this particular unit does have a house staff member 24/7, 365, where all the other ones previous have not. They've all been outside of the village limits, but within that radius of, so with that, I think you may have a little bit more, control.
I agree.
But, you know, as a citizen, if you ever see anything inappropriate, whether somebody crossing the tracks, I would hope, for your safety and the safety of the individual, that you would just contact emergency services. And then just one other morbid comment, stupid, it keeps us all in business, right? So,
Unfortunately.
it is unfortunate, but it is just human nature. That's why I'm in business.
Anything else from staff?
So, you know, I do want to, first, just bring up a couple of the comments. Emails for commissioners, I will definitely look at that from an administration level. I don't have the answer. I don't know if it's a charter thing or that. Website for, Ms. Everly and Ms. Wallace, I will definitely, I don't have control or access to those powers, but I will let the individuals know that we need to update that. I was unaware, so my apologies for that. Panhandling, Ms. Lacy, I'll also give you an update. As far as training goes, I really do try to do my best when we don't have meetings, provide a free online training to where you have the luxury of watching it in the comfort of your home. When we do bring Mr. Alex in from Rowe, it is an expense. We also pay the members, myself, Carol. So we have to, with that fine balance that we talked about earlier, weigh out what trainings are required by state law and what trainings that we can provide to you free of charge. So I definitely, as a fire marshal, training is very important for not only, you know, commissioners, but firefighters and police officers. So I will try to do a better job of providing those free trainings that I can find online. And then maybe ask administration for increase in the training budget so that we can get more interactive trainings. And I know Mr. DeSessa and a couple other commissioners do take extreme advantage of Rowe and those trainings, and I appreciate that because you have put in effort as much as you know you don't want to become that better person. So with that being said, I would love to let the public make their final comments to close the evening.
All right, item number 13, public comments. Again, up to the microphone, so your name and address. And also be mindful, which I didn't mention in the first time, there are 4-minute regulations. You know, we do hear your concerns, but please be pointed.
Name again is Jack Baker, 117 Railroad Street. Excuse me. Start with, I want to thank each and every one of you. I realize it's a big responsibility, but I do think one thing that would have avoided this whole outfit would have been communication. Had we known as neighbors exactly what was going on from day one, we wouldn't have had this problem tonight. And I'm sure if you stop and think about it, you'll find merit in that. All we want to know is what's going on in our neighborhood. Now, we talk across the fence all the time. And that's where the problem lies, is that we don't go across the next fence. Now, we've got a good neighborhood, and we're proud of our neighborhood. And I'm proud of the way you people try to represent us. But without the communication, there is a problem. It's not just for this particular organization. It's every organization out there, be it the VFW, the fire department, the village. We've all got the same problem. You gotta have communication. Now, as I said earlier, I've lived here for over 50 years, and when I hear you talking about merging with a township in one office, that's scary. They couldn't get together when they were across the street, they wouldn't walk across the street talking to each other. And when you wanna go into the same building, all I can see is problems, arguments. Please keep that in mind, keep an open mind on it. You know, nobody wants their taxes to be raised. But if it comes down to that, at least find a place that we can live for more than 5 or 10 years. Because since I've been here, the village has moved. Every 3 or 4 years, they find another place to stay. You can't live like that. You know, every 3 years, come in, pack everything up, and move to the next area. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, we owned, for a good example, the township that I live in owned a fire department on Great Harbor. They closed it up, built a brand new building, sold it. And now they wanna buy it back, they put their office in there. I really don't, you know, let's not keep robbing Peter to pay Paul. Let's buy it, get it done, and live with it. I mean, every time we go meet, it's all because lack of communication. And that's exactly what it boils down to. If we would communicate, I mean, you can send me out a flyer that says, hey, we got a meeting, you know, but then when I come and the man is getting paid the money to keep everything above the board, make sure we're legal, stood right here and said, if you don't pass it, it's gotta be passed. It's the law. That tells me that your hands are tied. If you didn't pass that ordinance tonight to open that zoning, it was gonna be ignored anyway. You had no power. I don't feel that's fair. I honestly don't. And it's not a direct remark to you, it's just the way I felt about it. When I'm sitting there and they say, you know, we got a meeting and everybody can come and voice their opinion, but you've got to pass it anyway. I've never heard of such a thing. I've belonged to a lot of different organizations, state level and all, and I've never heard such a thing. That's not right. That's not fair to you people. Let you do your job. Let the public know. You're always hollering that you never get any public input. You hear it all the time. I've been here for over 50 years. And I've never turned anybody away from my door. They had information. Or if I could help somebody, I've always done it. You've known me for long enough to know that. But we've gotta have communication. Without that communication, we might as well be snails and crawl up into a hole somewhere. Without communication, you can't do your job. Without communication, I don't know what's going on. And that's not right. That's not fair for you and me. We sat here and we see what's going on tonight. We holler at each other. That's not right. It's not right. We gotta have communication. You're the president. You take care of it. It's not fair to have the other council, you know, doing this. Am I right or wrong?
I was not trying to disrespect you, sir, and I hope you understand that.
Well, I
It's a part
understand
of
that.
Robert
But that,
Rules
in my
procedure.
opinion, that is his job.
You're correct, and I overstepped my bounds, and I apologize
Well-
for that, sir.
We got that straight now.
Thank you.
Okay, but as I say, I thank each and every one of you for the time you put in, because I know what it's like to be committed to a voluntary position. Because that's all this is. You might be getting paid for a meeting, but you're not getting paid. I gotta look at all the hours you guys put in. You know, I went through the chairs, in fact, VFW, right up to, I was, all-state commander for Fenton. I know what it's like to go to meetings and all you do is preach to the people. There's nobody else there to listen to. So again, I want to thank you. I realize your hands are tied because of the silly laws that we've passed or let be passed by other people in charge. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. catch it.
Kathy Bacon, 117 Railroad Street. I want to apologize for losing my temper earlier, but I do have questions concerning the single housing. I do not know how you ran his application. Aren't there any other questions you could put on that application that would apply to him having to say, I want single housing, I'm going to rent something out, multiple housing? Break it down to where someone has to answer that question specifically. And delay, if necessary, the whole procedure so we can be allowed to find out what's going on and to stand up for our rights. I think part of it comes back to our village and doing the right procedures prior to, even though the state can pass it later on, it would still delay. When I had my business, I had to come to meetings, I had to draw out what my sign was going to look like for my business. It had to pass historical. I had to go through the steps. So there needs to be more steps prior to any approval before it comes down to what happened tonight. That's my suggestion. I think that on your part, I think you need to just make those rules a little more difficult to slow things down and to be respectful of the citizens and of that business. I mean, he has every right to make money and do what he wants to do, but I think that might be a possibility. I would hope that you take that into consideration because it affects everyone. And you guys do a good job, and when your hands are tied, there's only so much you can do. I understand that as a past business person, so thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
I made a list. Good morning again. My name's Phil Allen. I still live at 203 LeGrand.
Mr. Allen, can I ask you what your last name is? Is that your last name, Allen, or is
McKee.
it?
I said it earlier.
Okay.
I go by Allen, so that's all I go
Okay.
by. I spent too many years in the military going by my last name. I don't like hearing it anymore. And everybody gets it wrong. Back to point. Stay inside of 4 minutes. I'm gonna miss those trees too. So that was point one. I had my hand raised to comment on the lighting wattage verbiage. I agree that wattage should still be a criteria in there. And the reasoning for that is wattage is an easy measurement. It's not a very difficult measurement. It doesn't require specialized equipment. I have once worked with specialized equipment to measure foot candle lights, and at the facility I had to do it at, it also had to be calibrated, which was particularly expensive. So that being said, that could be a consideration for if you're gonna measure by lumens or foot, etceteras, the expensive equipment, because somebody's eventually gonna have to say, okay, is this breaching the limit of the ordinance? And wattage is very easy. I know we've all driven south on North Holly and been blinded by the surprise big white background of Stagecoach's sign. So I know and agree with how that light is being measured and issued with the ordinance, but wattage is an easy layman's for the electricians and less technically nerdy inclined. Moving on your recommendation for training, My Robert's Rules of Order are extremely fuzzy, and my experience with it was a little bit more informal. However, there are lots of resources online for that to include books, and I don't know if the books will be in budget, but once you have the books, everybody can borrow and loan out and trade it on the book. So that's just bringing that back to point is not everything has to be the driest, dry eyes video that you have ever watched. Moving on, this goes back to Robert's Rules of Order. We actually had separately made business emails because information can be subpoenaed from them, and separating that from your personal email separates your personal life from your business and governmental. And apologize if I'm trying to race through all of this in 4 minutes. Back to 911, and it's just a commentary on the recommendation because we don't have a non-emergency line anymore. It makes it really hard for somebody to decide when that point breaches the point where it's no longer an abuse of the resource. In 12 years, I've only had to call it once, and that was because the neighbor was burning tires and my wife couldn't breathe. So, that being said, that hit the point of it past the point where it's not an abuse of the resource. It'll make it difficult for all of the neighbors to go, okay, this point, it's crossed the line. At that point, that is going to eschew, okay, it's a problem all week long, or it's a problem just this week on the terms of data collection. If we're trying to collect that as data, we have to acknowledge that some of the data is just not going to be collected. There it is. The last one, sort of last one, is you've repeatedly called it an emotional or subjective or non-subjective response of the neighborhood to have come out to say something about what's going on. So my question is, where is it decided that these criteria of 8 are actually met? Are you deciding, or are you deciding who's actually confirming that these criteria are met? Is it Rowe Engineering? Is it you? Where is that met? Because when I provide, and I understand it's anecdotal evidence that is contrary to what has been said, at what point do we not start and go, well, maybe we should take a double check on this event where all of the neighbors' trees that borderline the property have died? At what point do we stop and say, okay, let's give it another month to verify these concerns are not valid? Because we didn't. At least per my observation, we didn't confirm that any of these concerns were not a problem. We got our hands tied to being told by a consultant that we are legally obligated to say yes to all of these things, and got stuck in that route. We got stuck on that road. Where do we have the leeway to ask further questions to say, is this information actually true? Does it actually meet all of the requirements? And on the subject of trying to slow businesses from moving in, honestly, we're seeing enough of that. It is evident when you watch what's happened in downtown Holly for the last eons. I mean, the one store that had the issue with having to pull ground samples from underneath. I don't even know what that was about. But so many businesses have a hard time moving in, and they never last a year, unless they come from big money, as the case was with our builder. unless they come from extreme money background or some kind of financial background, businesses don't start and stay in Holly. And that is a comparison that I'd like to ask is, why do businesses just sprout in our neighboring communities, but in Holly they just come here to die? So I'm not trying to advocate for slowing business. I'm trying to ask, where do we draw that line between slowing business pursuits and allowing businesses to sidestep what appears to be common speak for, this is a clear, concise commercial application, until we build it as something else and then change our purposes after the fact. Those are my 7 points. I thank you all for your assistance, your questions, your answers, and your time.
All right, thank you. And if there is nothing else,